Welcome to another edition of Baseball and Beyond, and today, a big thrill of mine, I get to talk it over with the man they call Tewksie. Bob Tewksbury is on the phone. Hello, Bob.
Brad, what's going on? Yeah, Tewksie, that's it. They put the Y on there instead of just Tewks. You know, I like you put the Y on there. That's cool.
Well, it's a hockey thing, and even though I'm not supposedly a hockey guy anymore, I used to be. But once, the team that I follow loses every year in the first round or does not make the playoffs, I stick to my baseball roots.
I hear you.
You're a former Cardinal, so people remember you there. But now you're going to be a big-time, best-selling author. So you have a book coming out called 90% Mental, and we're going to talk a lot about that. Bob, if you didn't know this, has been a mental coach. I mean, is that what the title would be? What is the title?
Yeah, I think mental skills coach is the correct terminology in the industry. Basically it's, for those that are listening that, what's that mean? It's kind of like sports psychology, but the people, the long version is the people practicing sports psychology, that say they're sports psychologists have to have a doctorate in the field of sports psychology. Many of us have masters in the field of sports psychology or sport performance, but therefore cannot use the term psychology. So we go with mental skills coach.
It's like you're too smart to have been playing baseball is what I think. That's what I go. I remember the first conversations I had with you. I'm like, okay, why was this guy on the mound for? He should be like operating on people and taking out hearts.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good. Yeah, I tell you what, when you throw 85 miles an hour, you had to use your mind to get people out. That's what I say.
Hey, I know it, sir. You saw it. Okay, 65 miles an hour.
Right.
To open
it. No, you wouldn't even. You weren't pitching 65. You were lower than that.
So to be open and honest with the audience here, Bob was my first manager at fantasy camp, and he never showed up after my first year. I think I was the reason why he declined the opportunity to be a manager. But I remember having a conversation with you about this because you started doing this with the Red Sox. I guess full time in 2005. Kind of according to the book,
yep.
but you're one of the first guys to be hired by a team to do this, right? I mean, a lot of teams didn't. They kind of had guys on the side, but you were a full time. Hey, I'm in the dugout. Hey, I have an office here. Just tell us a little bit about that journey, just getting there to become the Red Sox, full time. And am I right? Were you one of the first to be a full time on the staff MLB mind coach? Mind coach.
Well, yes, yeah, mental skills coach. Yes and no. I was one of the first former players to do it. I think now there are more former players that are getting into the field as the field has grown. But as in 2005, I was probably the only player that played in the big leagues that had a master's degree in sports psych that was doing this work. With regard to the other teams and people doing it in the industry, I think Harvey Dorfman back in the late 80s, early 90s was with Oakland Athletics. Ken Ravizza was with the Angels at that time. And Dr. Charlie Marr, who's now with Cleveland, I think, did some stuff with the White Sox. But it was very minimal. When I broke in, strength and conditioning was just coming into vogue in baseball when I broke in, and so this is a really new field, especially within baseball. The individual sports, tennis, golf, have always had sports psychology or mental skills coaches. The Olympic teams, with the gymnasts and skaters and swimmers and things have always had that. But from a team aspect, baseball really just started coming around, I think, in the last 5 to 8 years to where a lot of teams have this position now, and it's exciting to see the field grow.
I just remember talking to you about it too, and I was just curious. The book is called 90% Mental, so it's sort of a play on how much of this game is just thinking, and 10% you're kind of throwing out there as being physical. But really, how many players do you think miss out on big time careers because they can't get over the hump of the mental, of the grind, and when and it's so hard to pinpoint exactly what you mean by 90% mental. But I think of just, oh my God, my hands aren't in the right place. I don't feel good at the plate or as a pitcher. Kind of the things you talk about with Jon Lester. Just tell me a little bit about how many players do you think maybe in the last. I don't even know how to explain this question, but do you understand what I? Okay, thanks, Bob.
Yeah. I'll take care of you. Don't worry, it's your show, but I'll take care of it for you. So, one thing, Brad, to go on the title, I think 90% mental is part of it. It goes on to say an all-star pitcher, all-star player turned mental skills coach reveals the hidden game of baseball, and that's what this is really about. People know that the game is mental, but this book takes you inside of what my thoughts were on the mound and in particular game situations, what Lester's thoughts were, Rich Hill, Andrew Miller. So it's really a unique peek inside the game that shows that the game is 90% mental, and it shows that the good players, even though they're still really good, are practicing it. So to your question about players that may miss out on this, I think there's a lot. I'll give you a quick story. I think it was probably 2008, 2009. I was with the AA Red Sox team in Manchester, New Hampshire, and 25 players, all around the old minor league locker room. I think I talk about this in the book. There's paper cups, peanut butter, jelly sandwich. Guys are hanging out there. The lockers are closed. It's hot. No TV. And I asked them. I said, "How many guys here are playing up to your potential?" And none of the 25 raised their hand. And I said, okay, so if we look at performance, athletic performance as having three domains, physical, fundamental, and mental, with a show of hands, you guys tell me which one is the reason why you're not playing up to your potential. And first I started with physical, and one guy raised his hand, he was injured. And then I went to mechanical and had two guys raise their hand. And then I went to mental, and they all raised their hand. And then I said, but what are you doing about it? And they all looked at me like, and so that's 25 guys in one locker room in AA of 30 teams. And there's 4 affiliated teams, full season teams within each organization. So I would dare to say that there's a lot of people that aren't using this as a way in which they can understand that this can improve their performance. And it doesn't guarantee you're going to get to the big leagues. And I think that's part of the problem with this, is that with this aspect of the mental game, is it's not tangible in the sense of, if I go throw a bullpen or go do something physically, I can kind of measure what that was and understand what I can do better. If you go in the weight room, you can get bigger and stronger. But, the mental game part of that is it takes total honesty to be able to identify that this is an area that needs to be worked on. Number 2, it takes diligence. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a very slow process, but those that are committed to it do see improvement and make it part of their routine. It's just something that it's starting to come into the light, which is great. But it's something that still needs some work.
Yeah, I think of it. I remember some of the things I said to you about. I remember Gary Carter telling a story during the '86 World Series where it was Game 6 and there was 2 outs, and I think he gets one of the first hits of that big rally. And he goes, I just went to the plate thinking, I don't want to strike out. I don't want to be the last out of this game. And you told me, boy, that's a terrible thought. You shouldn't be thinking that. And I said, but that's what I feel like. I don't want to be the final out of this inning. And you said, well, that's a very bad way to think. And I was thinking, well, I heard Gary Carter say it. He's a Hall of Famer. So, that's an interesting thing to me that, why you told me that's a bad way to think.
Well, but so the thing is, so let's look at that a little further. I think those thoughts are totally normal. And for Gary Carter to admit that was great. And it shows that even in his greatness, he was vulnerable. He was afraid of failure. And that's why this game and the ability to talk about those fears, it takes more courage to address it and talk about than it does to be macho and hide it. And so I think if I remember that situation correctly, what I said is that when you were telling me that, you were lying on the ground crying, holding your bat in your hand, saying, I don't want to go to the plate.
No.
There's a difference between you and Gary Carter.
Oh, man.
So what that feeling, and it just shows you're there as a fantasy camper, big baseball fan, and Gary Carter, who's the Hall of Famer, had the same thoughts, and those are normal. And so the art of the mental skills coach is to help a player when those thoughts pop up. How do you still go up to bat and give yourself a chance to play? Because if you go up there, a chance to perform, I should say, if you go up there thinking those things, there's probably a good chance you're not going to get the result you want.
It's crazy too. When these guys get in slumps, I always just think, all right, well, one, they're hurt, or two, their mind is just completely gone. But I think one of the weird things to me is when I take it to golf, it's so weird because when I play, and I don't want to sound like I do this a lot, but if I've had a few drinks the night before, well, maybe too many, I play so much better. And I think it's because I'm loose, my mind is asleep, and I'm just hitting the ball. And it's so different and it just sounds so dumb to say, but it's the best way I play golf. And then I'm watching Tiger Woods, so I just wanted to get your thoughts because Tiger really is in the news right now. And when you see him, what he's doing, obviously he's been hurt, he's had some injuries, but there's no one, I don't think, mentally better at the game of anything than he is. And when you see what he's doing now, don't you think it's just, man, this guy, once he's healthy, he had some mental issues too, obviously, but don't you think he's kind of put it all back together? Or what do you see in Tiger Woods if you're watching? I don't know if you're watching Tiger the last couple rounds. But.
Oh yeah. I think he was probably really upset that he had to make that long putt to force a playoff, and he had a couple of holes where he didn't give himself a chance to really make a makeable putt, but. And I think that he probably felt like if I get in this situation, I'm going to win. What would be interesting is I don't know who the guy that won it was, but his thoughts, if he all of a sudden, Tiger's coming up and I get a playoff with Tiger Woods, and this guy was basically, out of sight, out of mind for years, and now the guy goes back on Tiger's reputation, and it's like, oh my God, I'm in this, showdown with Tiger. So Tiger is really, it is amazing. He is mentally tough athlete. You can't achieve what he did without having that tenacity and toughness. And when healthy, it'll continue to see, what he does in Augusta and over the course of the season, because, once that clicks and the physical and the fundamental and the mental all come in together with any athlete, especially Tiger, they're dangerous.
So I did get a chance to read a lot of the book, not the whole thing, but I got to some stuff that I wanted to hear about. But I don't know if you addressed this. So you did talk about Jon Lester kind of right out of the bat, and that he didn't really want to talk to you till his late 20s. But I am curious about, he does have this thing where he can't throw to first base. And it's something that everyone has talked, like Ricky Ankiel, we've talked a million times about just him losing it. And Gary Bennett, just guys that are around fantasy camp, really. Gary Bennett lost throwing back to the pitcher. What have you had any conversations, and is there any way that you can, I just saw him do this spring where he bounced one to first because he just can't throw it to first. What are the conversations like on that, and is it something that's almost even past your pay grade on something like that, or is this something like, hey, I really want to make him right, even though I'm not with the Red Sox, I'm a friend of Jon Lester's, I want him to be able to throw to first base?
Well, I wouldn't say it's above my pay grade. I don't know of anyone who has an answer for that. I think that anyone that says that they do, I think is wishful, and I think there's no absolute way to do that. So quickly on Jon, first of all, he was really great for him to be into the book and to share his story of imagery, which was something that he wasn't particularly fond of or interested in prior to that discussion in the dugout in Oakland, which I go into great detail in the book about. When we were in Boston, no one runs in the American League. And he even says that his throwing to first wasn't an issue until he came to Chicago. And so with any player, who has, those type of throwing issues, it's such a little understood phenomenon. It's deep. I think, in my naive opinion of this, and just in some readings, and I'm going to make a statement that's pretty broad based, and I don't have any scientific data to back this up, but it's something that I think is connected. It's almost like a PTSD type of thing, where, in a sense of the people that I've talked to that have throwing issues, all had some significant event affect them. One event, and I had a pitcher that watched a guy in a big league game, watch a guy throw a ball to the screen, and thought, oh my God, I hope I don't do that. That would be awful. And then he went out and did it, and it just wrecked him. He got a groin injury, and then he had a hard time throwing the ball over the plate. I had another kid that was a shortstop that threw a ball to first in a tournament game and threw it wild, and the coach just berated him in front of the team, and he had a hard time, throwing the ball to first from the short. So, there's numerous things that happened, and certainly, even though John's with the Cubs, when I was with Boston, the fact that Jon was in the National League, we talked about that a couple of times, and tried a couple things, and it's just a really, really complicated issue that no one has the answer for. I believe Harvey Dorfman, who was one of my mentors and big proponent of the mental skills, like I mentioned earlier, he worked with Oakland, he wrote 3 books. I asked him about this, and he goes, if I had a nickel for every person that I've talked to about this that thought I could help them, I'd be a millionaire. And it's really a tough it's a tough thing, but nonetheless, people find their way through it, or they don't, or they change position and hit a lot of homers like Ian Keel did. So. Right.
That's like my fantasy camp, kind of the way I'm going. Since I seem to get to the third inning, and then I just can't find the plate. And I think it's some sort of PS. I have that same syndrome.
No, I think it's really lack of ability, but you can call it anything you want.
What a coach you are! What a mental skill! This is what I went through every time down there. I want to talk about your career then too, because I think it really does help when. First of all, I am really interested in this the mental side of the game. But I think one thing is kids in their 20s. I just remember me in my 20s. I don't think I'd want to hear any of this, and I don't think at 25 I'd want to hear it. And I think that's why it's interesting that Lester sort of finally took you around 29. And I think it just takes some maturing. But your career was really good in St. Louis, and I love the story you tell about the '92 All-Star game, because you're a guy that I guess Joe Torre kind of got you to figure it out somewhere in '93, but in '92 you make the All-Star team. You had an ERA around 2. You had this great run, and the story goes you pitched the 5th inning thinking, "Hey, I'm going to pitch the 5th," and then most starters don't pitch another inning, and then Bobby Cox comes and tells you you're going to come in again, and you tell the story about how, oh my gosh, I wasn't ready for this, and I went and watched the YouTube clip of it, and it is crazy. So just kind of relay that story a little bit, and people can read about this one in the book, but I was fascinated by it, and then I had to go. Not only did I have to stop reading, I had to go to YouTube to watch you pitch that game, because it's 1, 2, 3 in the 5th. And then the 6th, here comes a wave, and it's all mental. Right? I mean, you think it's mental, right? Yeah.
Well, so I was anxious before the game. I didn't, I was obviously excited. I didn't know when I was going to pitch. I pitched like 3 days before in LA. I thought it would just be an inning. I just didn't know when. And Glavine gave up 5 or 6 in the first, all on singles or some silly thing. And then Maddox came in. I think Cone came in. And then the phone came down, rang and said, "Tewks, you get the 5th." And I'm like, great. Whew, I'll get, so I went out. I had a good clean inning. I think I threw 9 pitches or something and got out Joe Carter, Ripken, and I forget the other guy. But anyway, so then I go back to the dugout. I'm like, oh, thank God. Inning scoreless, national TV. I'm good. And Bobby Cox comes down and goes, "How are you feeling?" And I'm like, "Great." He goes, "Good. You got another one." And I was like, "Oh God, no." That was my first thought, because What do you mean I get another one? No one pitches 2 innings in an all-star game. And because I had shut down mentally after that inning, it's the excitement of the game, the expectations. I'd done well. I was relieved. And then I couldn't ramp back up again. And I think that happens a lot once you turn off the motors and the competitive juices, it's really hard to ramp them up. And that's why I think pitch managers make a mistake when they bring in a reliever to get out of a tight situation, and they get out of it, and then they go back out there to start the inning thinking they're going to save the bullpen, and the guy that gets hit. That's what happens is, so much adrenaline rush to come in to get out of that inning that they really leave it out there, and to reboot all that is really, really difficult. So anyway, I went out. I think I got the first guy out, but then I gave up, double, and I won't go through each of the hitters, but with each hitter that got on, I started to focus more on me. What's happening to me? Why is this happening to me? I can't believe he brought me back out here again. I started losing focus of what was so successful that whole season was making this pitch and making good pitches. And so it just really snowballed, and, I made a couple mistakes, and I ended up giving up 5 runs or something and had to be taken out. And so that was not a good feeling. And, but that's one of the things about being honest, as you hear the narrative of a player, as the listeners hear a narrative of a player post game when they say, well, what happened on that pitch? And the guy goes, well, I was trying to throw it outside and it came back over the plate. I call bull S. I call BS on that. I call, I was afraid I was going to give up a home run, and I gave up a home run. I think the internal narrative that athletes have will never match up with their external narrative of reality when they talk to the media, if that makes sense. They won't say that I had a negative thought and I didn't, that's why I got hit. And you probably shouldn't in the middle of competition, but upon reflection of working with a mental skills coach or keeping a journal or, something in order to get better, you have to identify that. And that's why I was, willing to share my inner thoughts in this book with that particular episode of that game.
Yeah. It was a great story. And I know you're with the Giants now, but as you're telling this story and the way you're talking about it, I don't know if you're familiar with Tommy Pham at all with the Cardinals.
Yeah.
I
know that he just signed a contract, didn't he?
Well, he's still kind of arbitration eligible, so he keeps kind of doing the arbitration.
I got you. Yeah.
But there's not a player like him that I've seen in a while who he exudes confidence in himself. He actually throws out numbers that he wants to achieve, and he means it. Some guys will give you that, I want to hit 280, I want to play in 110. But in the way he talks after post games, I believe that he believes that he is this good. And I what I like about that is I like that. You don't see he's betting on himself. He says things you don't hear players say. And so when you talk about, guys talking after games and that, when he talks, I believe it. And that's what I like about him more than anything is that there's no excuses. If he misses something, he's going to tell you, I really missed that. But sometimes he'll say, I can make that catch every day. And it's amazing to me because you don't hear it from players anymore. Everybody's kind of conditioned. But
yeah, well, and good for him. And I think, I don't want to paint every player's comment with a broad brush saying that it doesn't match up. But I do know that, oftentimes when something like that happens, there's a thought that happens on the mound or at the batter's box or in the field that was negative or unproductive, and what they were afraid of happened. And, good for Tommy Pham if he can, if he's backing up the talk and walking the talk and he's being genuinely honest, then that's awesome. That's refreshing.
Yeah, and sometimes I don't know if his teammates enjoy it, but I do.
Yeah, I can see where that would rub the room a little differently, but that's all part of the culture of a clubhouse. How do you guys get together? How do you pull from the same end of the rope? And everyone's different, and that's what makes this such a challenge over the long season. That's why it's such a mental game. That's why everyone's got to read 90% mental and get a look inside the game to figure this stuff out, right?
Good cheap plug. Good job. So I mentioned Joe Torre. This is funny too. I'm so glad I wanted to talk to someone about Joe Torre. And so you're here, and I'm going to talk to you about him. I think as history obviously looks back at his career with the Yankees, he's now a legend. But the time in St. Louis, in 91, he won 84 and 78, 92, 83 and 79, 93, 87 and 75. And I think a lot of people back then were like, well, this isn't Whitey ball, and we're not playing fastball, and we're not in first place anymore. And I think he got a bad rap. I don't think he had any help from the front office when it came time, and especially 93. The team was closing in on the Phillies, and they bring in I think Todd Burns, and it just didn't work out. But I think history, if you look back, Joe Torre did, I think, way more than he could have thought of doing with this team. And I just remember being younger, thinking, oh man, this isn't Whitey, and he doesn't use the bullpen right. But am I right on that? I mean, I think you guys probably love Joe Torre, and you probably thought, hey, he's doing the best he can.
Well, I mean, Joe had been away in the broadcast booth for a while, and I just saw him this spring, and he remembers his first game managing the Cardinals. I think in what you said, 91, 90?
90 was his first year, I
90.
guess.
Yeah, I won that game. I was the winning pitcher. It's against the Phillies, and he still remembers that. And so Joe and I have always had a great relationship, and I'll just say that if you look at the roster of that team, of those teams, you had, we had certainly had great players like Ozzie and Pendleton and Vince Coleman, Langford coming in, Gilkey, Jordan, and Zeal and Pagnozzi behind the plate. I mean, there were some good people there. I think we just, obviously we didn't have the depth in the starting pitching. I think, we had Lee Smith. I think we had young pitchers. And to be honest, if I'm the ace of the staff, I was a 3 at best, probably 4 guy, and there I was a number 1 guy, and I love that role. But I think that it's always about the players. Good players make good managers. When Joe went to New York, he probably didn't change anything. He had good players, and good players make coaches look really, really good. And I think that we were just a few players short in St. Louis.
I don't know if you know Jeff Suppan well, but this is funny that you just said that. He's very cerebral as well, although I don't think he has a doctorate. But when he said, "Yeah, I knew I was a 3," when he got to Milwaukee, he got that big contract, and they paid him like a 1, and he goes, "But I'm a 3. I know I'm a 3," and I just found that was interesting for him to just even say that he knew he was a 3, and I find it interesting that you said it. That's just a funny thing to me that you guys know. I would think most guys want to say, no, I have number 1 stuff. But to know who you are, your 92 is unbelievable, by the way. I want to talk about that for a second. But just the fact of being able to say that has to be the first, I guess, admission, that, hey, listen, I know I'm a 3. Don't ask me to be a 1, right?
You have to know what you can and can't do. And, like I said, I was thrilled that during that time, over those 2 or 3 years, I was the opening day pitcher. They felt confident in my taking the ball, but I would have been better supported, if there was a Glavine or a Maddox or Smoltz in front of me, and they had 3 of them in a row. So, but the thing with being an athlete is understanding your strengths and weaknesses and what you can and can't do, and having a realistic expectation of realistic, self-evaluation of your abilities and what you can realistically do in performance. And, I think I probably performed above my means for a couple of years in St. Louis, but I think that was in large part due to where I was in my life. I loved St. Louis. I was totally comfortable. I loved the CJ and Buddy and the clubhouse guys and Joe, and my son was born there. The fans were always so good to me, and I was really comfortable, and I could just be me. I didn't feel like I had to be somebody I wasn't. And I think that's when players get into trouble, is when they feel like they've got to do something more or something different because of external pressures or external expectations, and that's what leads to trouble.
Yeah, I didn't know you then because I was still young and I wasn't working, but the fact that you became friendly with Tom Mee and Mike Helling made me think, all right, well, he must be a real nice guy if he wants to hang out with these guys.
Well, I didn't want to. They paid me actually to hang out with them, and I'm expecting I should be getting a check from them soon here.
They talked about I remember they talked about your art a lot. You still doing some drawings?
Oh yeah, I've got I got a giveaway T-shirt coming out in St. Louis. I don't know the details of it, but I just did a caricature of Gant, Langford, and Jordan in the outfield, and then one of McGuire that I think they're going to make a giveaway T-shirt of. I don't know. Hopefully, I'm not disclosing anything that's private and public and a big surprise, but. No, I still do it, and yeah, I'm doing that. I'm playing the guitar a little bit, trying to, those are what I call positive distractions, because when you're on the road for 200 days a year and you're doing the same thing every day, if you take the ball game with you home, it's really a tough thing to carry around. So I was fortunate as a pitcher that I had some free time, and I still try to continue those actions or behaviors now that I'm still in the game, and it gives me another perspective on what's going on.
Yeah. I have a couple more minutes. Hopefully you do too. But I want to mention, I always try to do this because I love Joe Pfeiffer and Cadence and everybody, but you show up at Cardinals fantasy camp, and I remember my first year I was on part of like a sponsored team, and this team had already known everybody, and when I got to know you better, it's so hilarious because you have like 3 pairs of glasses, you have one on your head, one on your eyes, and then one hanging from your neck. And these meetings start like 8 a.m, and your hair, you look like Albert Einstein. But you talking about this whole being an artist and a mental coach. I have not met another Bob Tewksbury in my life, and I'm very excited that I did. So you should go to Cardinals fantasy camp right now. I don't know how many times you're going to be going back in Jupiter, but that it is so fun, and it's just fun to meet a guy like you because, like I said, I'd only seen you on TV. I never got to cover you as a player, and cerebral is my favorite word. I think that one fits for you.
Well, I appreciate that. I have a lot of fun, and yeah, everyone this year, my hair was cut a little shorter. They were a little disappointed that I didn't come in with the morning dew every morning, but we won the championship. I had a really good team. It was fun to win camp. Since you left, I've had some better players. So, better players make better managers, right? So,
I got this nagging injury. It's in my head, but it's definitely an injury.
No, what I love about talking to you is, you have such a great wit and humor, and you can poke fun at you, and it's good. You like it. You can take it. But
crying on the inside, just crying all the days. It's really funny. That first year, I thought I was okay. The second year, I played pretty good. But the third year, I was so bad. And then the fourth year, I tripped over home plate. Like I hit a line. I hit like a line drive to left, and I couldn't believe it. I tripped over home plate, and I got thrown out by the left fielder. It was really awful. But no, I think I got old fast. I think I went from being a 25-year-old to a 90-year-old. I want to ask just a couple quick questions, and then I'm gonna let you go. And I'm going to put you on the spot here. Give me a good Pedro Guerrero story, right?
Pedro Guerrero. Actually, when we were in, we talked about that this year at fantasy camp with Todd Worrell. I remember when Worrell tackled him and threw him into the locker in Busch Stadium because I think Pedro had some guys from the other team. I think it were the Cubs came in after the game, and Worrell said, get him out of here. And Petey said something to him, and 2 big boys there, but Todd tackled him into the locker, and stuff was flying everywhere. And yeah, I'll never forget that. And that's what Worrell says when I'm at fantasy camp with him. He said, don't give me any crap, Tewksbury. I'll put you in the locker like I put Guerrero in there. So I'm like, come on, bring it on, man. I mean, I ain't afraid of you. That's what I tell him to his face anyway.
Right. I saw that was actually Sammy Sosa. I've heard that story. It was Sammy Sosa who came into the room to talk to Pedro. I've seen Todd Worrell took a camper, and this guy's a little.
I was there.
A little chatty, but he put him headfirst into a trash can.
In the trash can, yeah. Oh yeah, I was there too.
And picked him up with one arm. He didn't need to really use two arms. He just picked him up, threw him in and then left him there. It was put him in head first. Yeah, it was crazy. So you don't have any great dealings with. I think just Pedro is such an interesting character. Is that one of the best characters you ever played with?
Oh, there's lots. He was one of them. I can't even. It's sort of talking about other characters. And Pedro was unique in himself, but McGrain was a character. Rex Hudler's a character. There's lots of people that you play with that you find as characters, and I'd have to spend some time to think about who they were. But the baseball's fun with those people and people that you meet, and that's what keeps it going, is to be able to have fun and hear stories and tell stories and maybe even tell some true ones.
What? So I forgot that you came up in '89 and pitched most of September. So I was going to ask you about Whitey Herzog, and I thought, I don't know how much he played, but he did play a lot in '89 and then in '90 you come up right before he resigns. What was it like around the locker room at that time? Because I don't think no one saw it coming, and Whitey just said, I don't want to do this anymore. I guess he saw the free agency coming, and Vince was going to be gone, and Willie and Terry Pendleton were all free agents. But what was it like to be around Whitey at the end there when, you just know Whitey loves this game?
I was just trying to survive myself. I had surgery. I was up and down from 87 to 90. Whitey leaving was the least of my worries because I was on a big league team and certainly had followed the Cardinals, as a baseball fan and later a player in the big leagues. But, he was just so well respected. I've gotten to know him over the years of the SC League camp stuff. He's so well respected. He's probably one of the smartest guys in baseball, as the Cardinal fans know. And the way that he handled the bullpen was just special. Everyone knew their role. He's a great model for managing and coaching. And but at that time, to be honest, I was more worried about my own stuff than what was going on with Whitey. And then, Red was there for a little bit, and then Joe came. And so I've never had a bad moment in St. Louis. All those people are quality. C.J. Cherry is still a good friend, and he's been doing traveling secretary now for 30-something years. And Buddy Bates and Mike Jorgensen, who is my AAA manager, is still with the organization. So I've got nothing but great things to say about the Cardinals and the Cardinal fans. And I expect them all to go out and buy my book.
Yeah, I'm going to let you plug the book one last time. I have one last baseball question. I can't leave without asking about 1992. You have I don't know if Cardinal fans remember how unbelievably good you were. I used to do a feature called 5 Shockingly Forgotten Seasons. And this was like number one, I thought, because I don't think people remember the numbers are there, 16-5. You're an all-star, but a 2.16 ERA in the time of the steroid era, 2.16. All right, let's remember that. 233 innings and only 20 walks, and it's some sort of record, right? No one had that many innings with that least amount of walks. And also, I think your pace of play would be welcomed in today's game. I think you averaged 1 hour and 27 minutes when you were on the mound. A buddy of mine reminded me, he's like, ask him about working fast. So just tell me a little bit about everything. The fact that you worked fast, you didn't screw around out there, but not walking people is always a success. I mean, when you see a guy who has 190 innings and 20 walks, you're going to know that he had a good year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've always hated walks. But my control was it was always good, probably above average, but it became exceptional. And I think it's in the book that I ranked first on the all-time list in fewest walks per 9 innings pitched since the dead ball era, I believe. So, my philosophy was, I can't get you out if I don't let you hit it. And if you hit it, there's a good chance someone's going to catch it, especially with the team we had in St. Louis. So throwing strikes, and that's what, 4 pitch walks or, are pet peeves of mine. I just don't understand them. And then, 2-0 count, I would step off the mound, take a breath, get back. So that's what I tell the pitchers. I said, I didn't not walk people because I was never behind in the count. I was just able to make a good quality pitch when I was behind in the count. And that takes practice. In my ERA that year actually was under 2 until I went to Chicago. And I think I gave up 5 runs in 2 or 3 innings or something. And that pushed it up to 2-1. Imagine it pushed it up to 2-1-6. But it was a fun year for me personally. The All-Star game, which we talked about, the ability to go out there and and establish myself as a major league pitcher. But actually, if you look at that, I think 2 of my better games were actually in 1990. I had the near perfect game against the 7 perfect innings against the Astros on August 18th, I think, 1990.
It's my birthday. I remember that.
There you go. And then I think it was a 79-pitch complete game win, 1 base runner. And then I had a game against Tom Browning, 90 or 91. That was a 74-pitch complete game, 74 or 75-pitch complete game. I won 4-1. Chris Sabo hit a home run. The game was 2 hours long, and and that's the other thing is I had multiple games. I think they had some stat up where I had a number of complete game wins in under 80 pitches, which still kind of amazing when I think about that. But it was just like, you're either going to get me and I'm going to get the next hitter, or I'm going to. But we're not going to take all day figuring it out, So the only people that don't like, fast games are the beer vendors and, the hot dog vendors. Everyone else, the umpires like to, fast games. The hitters like to get off the field so they can go hit because they really like hitting better than fielding, so why not make those people happy and get in and off the field?
I was a youngster for that perfect game, and ESPN back then on Baseball Tonight, it was the only way you could see a Cardinal game in St. Louis. I think they did a few Friday night games, but we're watching Baseball Tonight, and they're like, Tewks is through 6, Tewks is through 7. So I got to give my mom some credit on this for the first time on the show. She goes, do you want to go down there? And I said, we'll never get down there. He's going to be done by the time we get down there because he pitches to. I wanted to go, but we were in South County. I'm like, he's going to be done with this thing in 10 minutes. So I remember that was the one time we were going to hop in the car and get down there.
Well, I was hoping you didn't say you went, and when you got there, Franklin Stubbs got a hit, because if he had, I'd fly up there now and find you and whoop your butt, because you would have changed the karma of the outing.
I think Franklin Stubbs' birthday might be August 18th, too. I'm gonna look that up.
Don't say that.
So I really had fun talking to you today. But tell us, most people will know that the book is out now, and how can they get it, and just give us the kind of why now, why write a book? You're still working with the Giants and doing your thing. So what made you want to do this?
Well, this book was a work in progress for years. It was actually my 3rd attempt with a publisher. So, I had a really good co-writer in Scott Miller, who writes for the Bleacher Report. It was part of, the Giants understood that this was a possibility when I came here. And they've been great about supporting the activities around that. Like I said, it's not about the Giants. It's not about the Red Sox. It's about players. It's about inside the game. And it's on sale March 20th. It can be available at Google. At Amazon. It's the book company's Hachette Book Group. It's also going to be available at Barnes & Noble. And I have an audio book coming out as well. I recorded that a couple of weeks ago, so you can listen to it on audio. I think it's really exciting. I'm going to do a signing at the Left Bank Books in St. Louis, I think on May 3rd, 3rd or 4th. I'll be in the city promoting it, and then I'll come back in September when the Giants come back, and I'll be able to be there, and hopefully people will buy the book, bring it to the park, and I can sign them there.
That's awesome. We'll have to definitely catch up. I enjoy my time with Bob Tewksbury. I think the last thing I do want to ask, were you always thinking? Were you always Were you always like this? Just like there is a story in the book in 1993 where Joe Torre almost makes it perfect for you, and you sort of had this light bulb go on. But were you always the thinking man's pitcher, and that's sort of kind of how you knew that this would work for you?
What's this, success or the book or what? What do you mean?
To be a skills coach, No,
I had no idea I was going to do this. I just knew that.
But I mean, did you always have that did you always do more thinking maybe than you think?
Yeah.
Let's say a Joe McGrain probably wasn't thinking as much as you were. Let's say that.
Well, I read Harvey's books about the mental game. I was always a student of psychology and performance. When I was in the minor leagues, I bought an audio program. It was cassette tape back then that had breathing and positive mantras and things that I made part of my practice, imagery every day, and I know it helped me. And I was always invested in that as a player. I think it was part of why I was successful, and then to be able to talk about it and coach players now is good. I actually, in conjunction with the book, I have a website that's up. It's bobtewksbury.com, and there's I started a blog, and there's going to be some audio programs available on that for purchase, and people want to check that out. I think that it's a really good site, and hopefully I can connect with some more pitchers, to help them fulfill their dreams and understand the importance of 90% mental.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm really interested in the subject, and I did get the book thanks to your publisher, and I've read probably 90% of it.
All right.
So it's good.
Good.
I can tell everybody I'm not a reader. I was hoping for the audiobook. I like to just listen and not have to actually get my mind to work, but I can definitely suggest Cardinal fans will enjoy it, baseball fans will enjoy it. And I enjoyed our chat, Bob, as always. Always fun enjoying it.
Thanks for having me on, Brad. I appreciate it immensely, and see you in St. Louis over the summer.
We will. Thanks. Bob Tewksbury, 90% Mental. He's got a book out. You've got to go read it. And he'll be in town a lot in St. Louis if you're around. That's this edition of Baseball Beyond. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.